Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Can You Hear Me? I'm Eileen Rochford, CEO of the marketing and strategy firm, the Harbinger Group.
And I'm Rob Johnson, president of Rob Johnson Communications. Today, we're diving into a topic at the forefront of technology and humanity: why your human voice matters in an AI world. As regular listeners know, we are fascinated, Eileen, by the advent of generative AI, and we're interested in discussing how it can be used most effectively. In fact, as you'll know, this is now our fourth podcast devoted to the subject. With the rise of artificial intelligence, there's a growing concern about losing our human touch, our authenticity. AI is undoubtedly a powerful tool for efficiency and content creation. However, it is essential to remember that it's just that. It's a tool.
And nothing more than that, right? I think we can't say it enough, honestly. The rapid pace of adoption and the consumption of energy involved in the generation aspect of AI it remains scary, and everyone needs to be reminded of the point is that it's to be used by people like us, by humans, period, as a tool, not a replacement, because of all of the challenges and risks that are wrapped up inside of artificial intelligence. That's what we want to talk about today.
Yeah, and we're going to get into that a little bit as well, because as people sit there and think this is unlimited, this potential is unlimited, which is true. If you sit there and think you're going to turn over the keys to your kingdom to machine learning, while amazing, the point you were just making a second ago is you really need to have eyes on it, you need to have ears on it, you need to have human eyes and ears on it, making sure that it all makes sense, to make sure that it adheres to the policies and the standards that you have as an organization.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, getting too wrapped up in the excitement of this and the possibilities is where danger really lies. Anything like this that has the potential power that artificial intelligence represents, should that go unchecked, untethered, then the use of it can go in some very dark directions really fast. Mm-hmm. And I think many of us know that, but that's why I started off by saying we can't say this often enough, that it needs to only be used as a tool and not a replacement, and that the presence of our humanity, which we'll talk about how to do that in a moment, but that presence is so required. And I think people might be getting a little numbed to all the headlines that are, every single day you read about another debacle in the use of AI or scandal in the use of AI, things that may appear to be not truly dangerous, like this. I think it was Sports Illustrated's generation of basically the true sense of ghostwriter, right? Those authors didn't exist. That was just a few months ago. I think it was in November when that broke. So
that brand was hurting anyway, and that almost that drove it into the ground, because now they're basically doing away with it.
Yeah, it's so sad. Yeah,
but that's where the cynicism of people that are looking to cut corners, that's where it can really harm you. And you bring a great example of Sports Illustrated, Eileen. Yeah, another example I want to give is somebody that I spoke to in the last 6 months, who was a marketer, who said, I just got downsized. I just got let go. They're using AI to do my job, like a chief marketing officer job. And I'm like, excuse me? Like they're just going to use AI.
A little wild. Whoa.
Well, if you're that short-sighted, good luck with that. Can it help with a lot of your tasks as that CMO? Absolutely.
Sure.
Can it take over for you and be effective? If you're willing to have somebody be in charge of it all the time and to put that human context into it, it might have some, useful moments. But you can't just turn it over to this, go do that project, go do this, to go do that. Mm-hmm. To me, that was this whole idea of AI kind of run amok.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. Rampant, unchecked work. No doubt about it. That's surprising. I haven't heard too many examples of senior positions being eliminated.
I heard that one story and I was stunned. I was absolutely stunned. And it's the truth. I was sitting there and I asked a lot of questions. I'm like, are you kidding me? Yeah. After I said that, I dove in with a bunch of questions, because it just seems, like it's ill-fated. But
yeah, absolutely. Ill-fated is a perfect description. Yeah, I would not think the future is very bright for any organization making decisions like that when in these nascent stages of the adoption of the tool, tools represented by AI, even in marketing. So that's very surprising to me, but a great cautionary tale of what you should not do as a leader of any organization.
And you know what I said to this woman that I was speaking to? I was like, do you really want to be part of an organization that, that does this? Even though she was reeling from, hey, they laid me off.
Sure.
And I'm like, but if they're heading in that direction, it's not going to end well. So
that's a great point.
At least your fingerprints aren't going to be on that potential disaster.
Yeah. And that's exactly what we want to talk about today, is just raising the point, particularly for organizational leaders, that AI is not your answer. It's not going to solve all your problems. It's not the way that you're going to cut all of your costs. So stop that thinking right away. We have a lot to share on why and the things to look out for and how to avoid making those mistakes. All right. We recently came across a very insightful article in the Harvard Business Review, and I believe that this was, just in the last couple of weeks that this was published.
It was I think it was the most recent. It was
February,
March. Yeah, February, March.
And the article that we'll put this in the show notes, of course, but just in case, you're a subscriber and you want to look for it right away. It's Bring Human Values to AI. And how coincidental that we had planned this topic just as that broke. Yeah. So,
I was looking around for resource, resource information. And I was like, oh God, there's one right there.
Well, to me, that just reinforces the need for the discussion of this topic today, right now. So that article, Bring Human Values to AI, emphasizes the importance of maintaining our human voice in this age of AI. The article highlights how AI can enhance decision-making processes and streamline operations. But it also says, and I quote, seeks to identify the challenges that entrepreneurs and executives will face in bringing to market offerings that are safe and values aligned. Companies that move early to address those challenges will gain an important competitive advantage. End quote.
Values aligned. There we go. We're talking about your organization. We're talking about your voice, the authenticity of the way you do business. And it can't be just checking a box in a one size fits all. And I think that speaks a little bit to the quote that you just read from there, Eileen.
Absolutely. Values aligned being a key component of all the challenges discussed in this article. Would you like to discuss what values aligned means now, or what shall we hold until after we go through the elements?
I think we should. I think we should tee it up a little bit here, but we probably. I think it'll make more sense to everybody once you hear a little bit more about this. And as we dive in a little bit deeper into this Harvard Business Review article, you're going to see, oh gosh, I should think about that, or I should think about this. And we're not going to get into every nuance of the article. You can read that if you really want to dive in. But it also leads us, and I think this is interesting, and I don't want to tee up too much here, into how you as an organization should be running your AI protocol, for lack of a better term. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely.
So the question is, how can we ensure that we don't use our human voice in this AI-driven world? So the HBR article lists 6 challenges for those wanting to bring that human component to the discussion. And they can be pretty technical as well. But for purposes of this discussion, let's boil it down to defining and writing values into your AI program. So you have this program, but how is it going to reflect your values? So this is aligning your partner's values, ensuring human feedback, and preparing for surprises. So the partners can be people that are helping you create this AI product. Partners can also mean people that you do business with, because you're going to be perhaps creating some content or doing research, for them as a client. How is that going to align with the values that they have, and are you all on the same page? So I didn't want to get into too deep into like point by point by point by point, because there's some really important things we want to get to. But I just wanted to kind of, we want to make sure that you understand that this, having the human component, needs to be built in to what you're doing. Whenever you're creating your plan, your program, it needs to make sure that that's evident.
Yep. So it's kind of like when we talk about baking in values into whatever tool that you're utilizing that's artificial intelligence based. It's like you also need to have, or think of it maybe as ethical guardrails. And I believe the article even used that phrase.
Yes.
Ethical guardrails is the thing that I've heard in a lot of places, that going back to how your company makes decisions, ethically based decisions, you have to determine how to translate that into any artificial intelligence tool that you're using so that it helps you avoid any pitfalls that could be created. There's so many, but ethical guardrails is a really good way to think about it. And getting the tool or tools that you're utilizing to understand what values does your organization espouse in all operations and functions, and how those values need to be reflected, as well as what are the values of your customers. So bringing both of those into, I guess the programming, for lack of a word right now, into the artificial intelligence tool that you're utilizing can be really helpful. And it might be able to save you from probably 80% of potential problems, but it's never going to replace the human gut check, the human impact. But this is moving at a really, really fast pace in the marketplace right now. For example, so one of the big dangers that everyone's talked about from the beginning is how artificial intelligence, particularly generative AI, has the power to create dangerous content, threatening content, things like hate speech, things like production of malware that can take down a company or a government. And those guardrails, not just ethical, but also technical, really, are being introduced pretty quickly. Like GPT-4, I think last I read it was a really high number. It was like 82% less likely to produce threatening content of the type that I just described than its predecessor, which is good. Yeah. I'd like to get to 100%. Yeah, that'd be pretty cool.
It's like, hey, we're almost there. It's like, for something like that, let's get all the way there.
Yeah. So, but that's a great example. Like, just think about, ChatGPT and that organization and how far along they are. They've been doing this for so long, and they're still only able to get their latest iteration of their tool to be 82% less likely to do that. So remember that the producers, the creators of these tools themselves they can't get their arms around this fast enough. So if your organization is relying on those tools in how you're leveraging AI in the different aspects of operations in your organization, you're unprotected, at least as far as, GPT-4 goes, by about 18%. That's a margin of error that I'm not comfortable with.
That's a very high margin. Yeah, it's a very high.
That's very high. Number. Yeah. So again, I think that, as we said earlier in this show, the point here is to keep saying it as a reminder to everybody. Don't get numbed to the excitement. You have to stay really, really vigilant and carefully select the ways in which you're going to utilize anything in terms of generative AI in particular. Just be really, really careful and constantly monitoring and having a lot of human beings inside of your organization closely monitoring how it's being used and what's being produced when it is used, and preventing a lot of that to go to market until you're 100% protected, not just 82%.
You are 100% right about that. And basically what Eileen's saying is check your work. Check your work, because the thing that we learned early on, and this is when we started doing this about a year ago, was like, if you don't put in any specifics and say, hey, AI, write something about the Can You Hear Me podcast. And I remember when you did this just to check it out, it was spitting out just absolute garbage because it had no guidance. And so what we've done, just as people that talk about this a lot, that have this podcast, it's like the more information you give, and I think a lot of people understand that when you're talking about this, the partner that you're using, whatever tool you're using, the more information you put in there, the better product you're going to get. Better product, not best product. 82% less, not 100% less. That's the point. So I think what you're saying, it's like, you got to check your work. You can't assume that I typed in a bunch of, for generative AI, I typed in a bunch of information information that was very specific for what I wanted. And you can get the worst case scenario, which are the scenarios you were talking about, but you can also get kind of mealy mouth nothingness. Even when you think you're being specific. And I know this to be the case because I've done it where I thought, I was very specific, and I would see it back, as I'm creating content from time to time using it. And I would say, well, that's not right. Well, that's real generalist. That doesn't say anything. That's why you can't assume, even when you are specific.
Yeah.
You can't assume it's going to have the voice. It's going to have the standards that you want. And that's why, to Eileen's point, whether it's you, whether it's your team, eyeballs need to be looking at this. And they need to be making sure that it all makes sense and that it is values aligned, as we said earlier.
Yep. Yeah. Just because things are accelerating in terms of capability, and you're reading about that every day too, which might lead you to think, oh, okay, well, then we should be using this. And it's got to be, close to 100% accurate. Do not make that assumption and do not make that mistake. And put in place the guardrails in your organization that will protect you proactively. So on that note, we want to make this next point. All these issues being raised in the HBR article beg the question for particularly those of you who are leading organizations or companies. And that is, what is your documented policy for AI usage and utilization? In other words, does your company have a formal AI policy? You need specific guidelines for how you and your team, your teams, your departments will use it. And if you don't, what can go wrong if you don't have one? There's a ton that can go wrong. So let's sit here for a minute and talk about that.
And when we started discussing this as we were putting this episode together, and you were very clear on having the documented AI policy and how important it was, and I was like, well, I think this is a perfect opportunity for you to share with our listeners here at the Harbinger Group, because you all are utilizing it so much. And we had some of the folks that work with you on about almost a year ago talking about what works, what doesn't work. So I know it's been front of mind for you, top of mind for you. What is your policy, and what are you hammering home to the people that are on your team?
So it's really simple. And frankly, our team came to this conclusion together, and it became really obvious after even just a few months of, I'll call it dabbling, with these various tools and dedicating lots of time to learning all that we could about them, following all the most significant influencers in this space to see, all right, they're way ahead of us on this. What are they learning? Right. So we took a cue really from many of those folks. And then we drew our own conclusion, which is this. And it's very simple. We decided that we are a human being first organization. That's what we are. We start real work, whether that's writing or recommendations or strategy, from our own hearts and minds first. And the way that we bring in the power of artificial intelligence right now on this team is in two aspects of our business. First, research. Help us do research better and more efficiently. Get us more resources. Get us a synthesis of information, perhaps faster than we've been able to do in the past. Because in our business, research is truly the foundation, of every marketing house that we build. You start there, gather all the information, synthesize it, then analyze it so that you know where to take your recommendations and your strategy, right? So we decided we use it to research, AI that is, and to organize. So after we've done some extensive research on any given topic, right? Feeding a lot of that information, even the facts that were kind of summarized from articles from Harvard Business Review, for example, into our tool of choice, whichever one that may be. And it varies by team member, I got to be honest. And then asking for structure, organization of that immense amount of material. That gets us, again, massive running start, way down the field, farther than we would have been, and faster than if we had done this manually. And everyone on the team had to consume all that information and draw those conclusions. So literally, we use it to find all the good stuff, and then we check against it. We go and see, if I were doing this research myself, what would I have come up with? Just to try. And then we compare it against it to see, is it flawed? What did it miss? is there a critical element here that this summary is based on that was completely left out because the tool was told to do something, only partially, right? Because we make errors in the inputs that we, even give, the orders, right? The prompts that we give to the different artificial intelligence tools all the time. That's why people are being trained right now as AI prompt writers, and those jobs are in such high demand, right?
So basically, you're saying if AI only had AI to tell us what to do, it'd
right.
be fine.
There you go. Now that's a whole other plane, and I don't even want to go there because my head just can't get wrapped around that.
I know, mine either.
So essentially, we decided that the best way for us to do what we do is to gather information, to organize the information, and create structure with it. And from then on, the human beings take over here at the Harbinger Group. And there's one other thing that I'll add to this. So that's basically like our documented approach, if you will, to the use of artificial intelligence kind of altogether, bar none here at our company. The other thing that I want to mention is that we never, ever, ever create anything that doesn't then have a human being check it. And, we've said that a lot, whether subtly or overtly in the now 4 episodes that we've done on this topic. But I think it's that is another critical piece of a documented policy. You have to say it because, interestingly, even I say that the danger resides at any level, whether you're talking about an entry-level person, a mid-level person, or a really, really experienced person in our industry and probably in any industry. We are all new to this. This is all exciting. It's kind of like a new toy.
It is.
And we rush in, without the deep thoughtfulness that's required in incorporating any of these tools into our operations and business, departments, divisions, whatever you would want to call it. And so you got to write it down. You got to make sure everyone understands this is our policy, our framework for decision making in the usage of anything related to artificial intelligence, so that you're not making assumptions, because assumptions are going to leave you really vulnerable to the risks that artificial intelligence represents to any company at all. And right now there is a really, there's a demand, I'll say, in PR, advertising, digital marketing for agencies to divulge how they're using artificial intelligence right now. And the transparency that's associated with divulging that information is having an impact on credibility and reputation. So if you're not revealing that, if you're choosing not to, ask yourself why, right? Because maybe at this point you should be, because you don't want to be overusing any of this without your customers knowing it.
As you sit here and explain your policy, and you talked about research and organize, and then you said the last piece is ask for structure, and then the humans take over. Kind of, you touched on it a little bit, but what does that mean? Ask for structure. You're asking the generative AI for the structure. What does that mean? What is that? Just the outline in general.
To organize information is really what it means. So hierarchically, whatever way that we want it to be organized, we give it that request. Do we want it to be organized in terms of, sometimes it's time-based. Tell us what happened in this, in the last year and a half related to this issue. Give us the timeline, the breakdown, or organize these thoughts in order of importance based on blank, X, Y, or Z input, right?
Is there anything else we're missing there? It's pretty simple. You've outlined it very clearly about what your expectations are as a leader.
Right. And for now, I think the best guidance that we can give, and I'm just doing it the way that I think is good for us and for our clients. But any leader of any organization right now needs to keep it simple, stupid, for real. Because if you get too mired in this, you won't be able to cut through it, and the chaos will just continue. You just need to boil it down to something really simple, maybe along the lines of what we did, which is you can use it in these ways. Anything that falls into these categories, absolutely okay.
Very smart.
Check it with a human check at each, major deliverable to make sure this isn't BS, because it's still producing a lot of BS, and you might, miss it because you're believing all these headlines about the fast pace of acceleration of accuracy. Don't do that. So make sure you boil it down into, here's the ways that we use it. And these are all okay. As long as we have these double checks in place, that's fine. But at what point do human beings take over in your organization and really deliver the product that you're creating, you need to say when that is as well and document it. Yeah. And don't forget that whole think about, are you divulging how it's being utilized? I heard somebody say something that was pretty interesting. It was like, well, do we divulge when we use spell check? Because that's basically what this is. Right. Right. And I'm like, no, it's not basically what this is, but it's kind of like when that was first introduced, maybe it was a little bit like that. This has the repercussions of the usage of particularly generative AI are so huge that you really do need to sit back and be honest and forthright about the usage of it. And gut check yourself. Like, how is this impacting things for us or our clients in a way that they should know about it and share that? So
yeah, no, it makes perfect sense, and you outlined it in great detail. And I'm glad that when I asked you that question, that you're like, here's how it works for us, and you're like, I don't know if it's the right way to do it. It's just the way I'm doing it, and that's why you're that's why you're the CEO. So I don't want to get I don't want to get too simplistic here toward the end of the podcast here, but AI as it's currently configured, again, it needs a human touch. If you use AI to create content, you must ensure the human voice is evident in the editing process. Get rid of I was talking about it before, the generalities. Even when you put structure around it, even when you put detail around it, sometimes they're generalities. And it sounds like, well, anybody could have done that. Mm-hmm. So add your voice to give it the humanity that some AI content lacks. And that leads me to a point that I've made time and time again, and I think it's very important to make here with you, which is when people would say, oh gosh, hey, AI, it's really, it's developing week by week. Our heads were spinning, right? And everybody'd say, well, gosh, Rob, you're a consultant, a content creator, what are you going to do? And I'm like, and I know you feel the same way. We're getting paid for our ideas. There's a machine out there that can try to emulate something, but the journey that I went on for 30 years that started in journalism and now it's in communications consulting is unique to me. The decisions I offer up for my clients are based on the experiences I've had. You can try to trick that or game that, but that's really why I'm bullish on our futures. Mm-hmm. And I'm bullish on the fact that humans are always going to matter in the realm that we're in, Eileen, which is, we could just go type in some things and then AI could spit it back out. But even though it's improving, and even though they say someday they're going to be able to have the experiential thing that, that I have as a professional or you have, and I'm like, we'll be the judge of that. Maybe. Look how it's gone so far. Maybe, or maybe not. But we're getting paid for our ideas. And I think that's a really important point to kind of drive home when we talk about this human touch.
Absolutely. That's spot on. We are without the human touch, the injection of humanity and all of the things that make us human into content. It's going to fail. People are going to get so tired of the repetition, the boringness of the content that AI creates, which frankly, we're already seeing it. People are, you've probably seen posts on LinkedIn, which I certainly have very recently, just that anything with, certain words that are completely overused by, generative AI tools, that any posts that, have that, I just flick right on by, forget it, not interested, give me the next one. It's not real.
Not worth it.
It's not real, right? This isn't a birds aren't real moment. This is a words aren't real. So don't believe it. Just click on by, as I say.
Even if bird is the word, don't believe anything. Hey, I want to talk real quickly, and this is related in some form or fashion to it. But you and I were at the Communication Leaders of Chicago AI event at DePaul University, and I thought it was a wonderful event. But it just speaks to the fact of how academia and how PR professionals are all trying to figure out, like, how does this fit in our world? And part of that discussion is, how do we keep that human component to it? Didn't you think that was eye-opening and it was just a great kind of robust discussion?
Yes, I did. The research in particular that was conducted before the event amongst members of CLC, attendees, et cetera, was really interesting. And I know that there is a link to that research on their website, recently launched website, which is very nice.
Yeah.
Ginger Porter talked about the coming website when we were there, and now it's real. So we'll put the link to that research in our show notes because that's I think, very worthwhile for anyone, particularly anyone in marketing, grappling with the usage of AI right now. You'll get a feel for how lots of others in leadership positions in this industry are thinking, feeling, doing when it comes to AI. So you would probably benefit from giving that a gander, and we'll link to it. But I mean, I was particularly heartened by the repetitive aspect of many themes, such as this injection of human voice and the spirit of creativity, the essence of creativity being the thing that will win out above all in creative industries like ours.
Yep.
Very heartening, and just good to know that we're all thinking along those lines. And frankly, I in no way do I think that that's, we're drinking the Kool-Aid and just want to see that that's the case. I concur with you, Rob, that that's absolutely true. But that's why we're having this discussion right now, because in order for that to be true, the presence of humanity in whether it's communications or the creation of products has got to remain. And that's the job of leaders of organizations and companies, to make sure that that's what happens.
Can I get an amen?
Okay.
That's perfect. That was terrific.
Yes, let's get an amen. I love those.
And we have some great show notes. We got the Harvard Business Review. We got the Communication Leaders of Chicago. I'm glad we're able to talk about this here at the end and throw that in there, because I thought it was worthy of talking about, and I'm glad that we'll be sharing it with our listeners.
Yeah. So, all right, I'm just going to, close by saying, don't stop thinking about this. Don't get complacent. We all have to remain super vigilant, and it's particularly incumbent upon those leading organizations and companies to do so. So we need your help, guys.
It's obviously on our minds. This is as we mentioned, it's our 4th episode. And when it's time for a 5th one, whenever that is in the coming months, we'll do one on it.
Yes, we will. This isn't going away.
Our eyes are wide open to this, and I'm really happy to know that about us.
Yeah, we're going to stay on the big issues. Don't you worry about that for a second. So that's going to do it for another episode of Can You Hear Me? I'm Eileen Rochford. If you would love to weigh in on this podcast or give us an idea for a topic for a future show, please reach out to us at our new Can You Hear Me podcast page, which is on LinkedIn.
Yes. And it's growing by the day, which I'm very happy to report. And I'm Rob Johnson. We do thank you for listening. If you like this show, please consider giving us a review on any of the platforms where you find Can You Hear Me? That's Apple, Spotify, and much more. Your reviews help other potential listeners find this show. Thank you so much.